Long before Christopher Columbus, Vikings were sailing to North America. Let me explain. Around the year 1000, Norse explorers led by a guy named Leif Erikson established a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada. They called it Vinland. Now, this was around 500 years before Columbus arrived, and at the time, Newfoundland was a part of the larger continent known as North America. So technically, the Vikings were the first Europeans to set foot on the mainland. The Vikings built their settlement on the island of Newfoundland, which is located in the North Atlantic Ocean. This made it an ideal spot for trading with the native peoples who lived there. The Vikings had traveled from Scandinavia in ships that were perfectly designed for the open seas. They were able to navigate using the stars and their knowledge of the tides and currents. They also brought with them goods that were in high demand among the natives, such as woolen blankets and iron tools. In exchange, they received items like furs, which they could then sell back in Europe for a profit. But the journey to Vinland was not without its challenges. The Vikings had to contend with harsh weather conditions, including blizzards and icebergs. They also had to deal with the native population, who were not always friendly. There are tales of violence and battles between the Vikings and the natives, likely due to competition over resources and land. Despite the difficulties, the Vikings persisted in their efforts to establish a settlement in Vinland. They built houses and a shipyard and began to farm the land. However, their outpost didn't last long. Within a few decades, the Vikings abandoned their settlement and went back to Europe. It's not clear why they left, but it was probably a combination of factors, including the cost of maintaining a settlement so far from home and the ongoing conflicts with the natives. Still, their journeys to Vinland prove that Vikings crossed the Atlantic Ocean centuries before anyone else dared. In fact, the Vikings had a much greater knowledge of the world than most people give them credit for. They had established trade routes all over Europe and even in the Middle East and Asia, and their ships were some of the most advanced of their time. So next time you hear someone say that Columbus was the first European to reach the Americas, you'll know the truth. The Vikings had been there centuries before him. Thanks for watching.